What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now the Ferrari V12s don't have a good reputation when it comes to values, especially the new ones are notorious for their high depreciation rates. Some owners lost, for example, a ton of money on an A12 or a GTC4 Lusso. However, now that V12 models are close to extinction and pressure to get rid of petrol-powered cars increases, the V12 market might be close to reviving. Back in August of last year I already showed you 4 reasons why the FF and the 599 might be the next big thing. We saw that they offered good value for money, that supply was low, that search interest dynamics were changing and that prices were increasing. In today's video we will figure out what actually happened to the V12 models, but we will also take a more high-level perspective. And this means that we will also look at other V12 models such as the Lusso, the F12 and the A12, compare the trends to the mid-engine market and figure out what this means for future prices. But before we do all of that, let's first have a look at today's V12 market. Over here we have the model year to price view of the US market. Each model is displayed by a different color, but you can see that the graph is a bit difficult to read due to the fact that some cars are priced at or over $1 million. These are the GTOs, the TDFs and the GTSs. We will remove these now and also not cover them in the rest of the video, as the market segments are so small that it's difficult to draw any reliable conclusions based on the data. Alright, now we can see a bit better what's going on. We have the 599 in blue, the FF in green, the F12 in red, the GTC4 Lusso in purple and the A12 in orange. Now before we talk about the prices, let's first consider the market size. This is namely extremely small for the V12 market. For these 5 models there are only 119 cars for sale, and most of them are by the way F12s, as they make up 32% of the cars that you see over here. Now in terms of pricing, you can see that the FF and the 5.9 are extremely close. The FF has a median price of $175,000 and the 599 of $185,000. Also the F12 and GTC4 Lusso are close. The F12 has a median price of $287,000 and the Lusso of $270,000. And it is for the first time in 1.5 years that the F12 is actually priced above the Lusso, even though that the Lusso is a lot newer. The A12 clearly stands out from the rest of the market. It's the youngest car and with a median price of $400,000 it demands a significant premium. What's interesting though are the price overlaps that we can see in this market. You can see that between roughly $200,000 and $250,000 you can have the choice out of a very low mileage 599 or FF or a high mileage F12 or Lusso. Now if we move on and also have a look at the mileage to price relationship, then we can see that the median mileage doesn't differ so much among the model types. You can see that a 14-year-old 599 tends to have a median mileage of 11,000 miles and that this is close to a Lusso, which tends to be only 4 years old. And that's a bit crazy, isn't it? In any case, when we look at the mileage to price relationship, then we can see that it's a bit steep. There are obviously differences between the model types, but on average they tend to lose 1% per 1,000 miles driven. And that's on the high side when compared to other cars which I've analyzed on the channel. Yet, it is something which you maybe could have expected. We are talking about Ferraris after all. But we're now up to date on today's market, and that means that it's time to have a look at the price development over time. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, the V12 market might be reviving. So let's compare the price trends. But before we do so, if you like this video, please click on the like button down below, as it really helps to support the channel. You can also follow me on Instagram, it's at Fourwheel Trader. I don't post so many photos as I mainly share updates on the car market in my stories. But now then, the prices. Over here we have the median price development over time for the A12, Lusso, F12, 599 and FF. Now it's of course no surprise that all of these lines are trending upwards, as almost all cars went up in value during last year, but more about that later. Let's cover each model in detail and then aggregate our findings. If we start with the A12, we can see first of all that data for the historical price trend is rather limited. Nevertheless, the data what we have shows something interesting. It namely reveals that prices increased by 6.7% between July and now. And remember that this only covers the superfast. The GTS is not included in this number. Now given that A12s initially lost a bit of value, this is a decent result. It is however not a record-breaking number. What's perhaps more interesting and something which might be able to explain this price increase is the supply level. Supply almost dried up completely. There were 54 cars for sale in July, while there are only 23 for sale in today's market. Now if we continue with the F12, then we can see a different picture. Market prices really ramped up after a sluggish period. Between August 2020 and August 2021, prices only increased with 11%. Yes, only 11%. This number is quite low compared to the rest of the used car market. More recently though, we can see that prices increased by 12%. This is almost the same as before, but the increase happened in a much shorter time period, namely between August and now. The total price increase does then also add up to a respectable 25%. Moreover, the latest price increase drove prices above the ones of the Lusso, a car which is 3 years younger. This crossing of the price trend is also aided by the low price increase in the Lusso market during the last 5 months. Prices only increased with 3.5%. However, the Lusso market is also the only market which saw a significant mileage increase. In August of last year, a typical Lusso which was for sale had a mileage of 5,000 miles, while it's 9,000 miles in today's market. And remember that we saw earlier that these cars are quite sensitive to mileage increases. Consequently, the Lusso only increased with 11.8% over the shown period. However, I also corrected the price trend for this difference in the mileage development, and this revealed that the price increase in the Lusso market was the same as the one in the F12 market. Now if we move on then to the two cheapest models, the 599 and the FF, then we can see that prices developed very similar. Yet it's also a bit tricky to see due to the scaling of the price axis. So let's have a look at these two models separately. We can see now that the 599 market increased with 32.5% between October 2020 and now, and that this is 34.6% for the FF. And those are excellent scores. We already identified before that these cars were on a roll, and they did then now also continue the uptrend convincingly. Yet, when it comes to the 599 market, we need to take into consideration that there are cars with and without the HGTE package. This is a package which drastically improved the handling of a 599 and a must-have, at least if you believe the reviews, if you like to drive your 599 in a spirited way. If we quickly split the market by the cars with and without this package, then we can see that there are significant differences. In blue we have now the cars with the package and in orange the ones without the package. And this graph reveals that values for the HGTE cars remained flat and also that we can't trust the price trend. Supply is way too low, and this is highlighted by the large shaded area which shows the price uncertainty. However, I didn't just pull up this graph to show that we can't trust the price trend. We can namely still trust the price trend for the 599s which don't have the pack and the FF. This reveals that prices developed in parallel between October 2020 and August 2021, but that they started to deviate in the last 5 months. 599 prices accelerated, resulting in a total increase of 40%, and compared to the other cars that I've analyzed on the channel, it hereby ranks in the top segment. It's simply a good score. It's however too early to say that these two price trends really broke away from each other, but it indicates that there might be something developing here. You see, if we only look at the 599s that don't have the HGTE pack and the FFs, we can see that the price increase in the FF market is not as convincing as the one in the 599 market. We can see from the shaded areas, so the confidence interval and the interquartile range, that the market bottom remained more or less stable and that the market top increased. Both have an almost concave shape. Now in normal words, this means that it is the top of the market segment which is responsible for the price increase, as the market bottom remained more or less the same. We are not looking at a full market shift in the FF market, and the price increase over there is then also not statistically confirmed. And this means that it could be the result of chance. And we can see how all of this differs from the 599 market. Over there the shaded area has a more convex shape and moves in line with the median prices. The price increase over there is then also fully statistically confirmed. But again, let me reiterate that this doesn't mean that the two markets will break away from each other. It's just an early indication. But let's go back now to the complete overview, summarize what we saw and figure out what this means for each model type. We saw that prices increased with 7% for the A12, 25% for the F12, 12% for the Lusso, but that this results largely from the mileage development, and roughly 33 and 34% for the 599 and the FF, but that this was 40% for the non-HGTE 599s. And we can see from all of this that it are the older cars which increased a lot more than the newer ones. It are then also these older V12s, so especially the 599 and FF, which are already bottomed out for quite a while, and I think that it was not really a question if they would go up, but more when they would go up. Well, somewhere in the summer of 2020. At roughly $120,000 to $130,000, for which these cars were offered back then, they represented good value for money, at least if you could afford the maintenance bills. At that price point, the number of cars with such a glorious V12 is simply limited, and also decreasing. And this might have just been enough to give a push in demand which started the price increase. And realistically speaking, not much is needed to move these markets as supply is very low. There are only 19 clean title FFs for sale, and for the 599 this is 25. Now we also had a look at the F12 and the Lusso market, and we saw that these sit at a significant premium compared to the 599 and the FF, but also there we saw an acceleration in the price increase. For the F12 this is something which is perhaps expected. That car is now around 7 years old, which usually means that it's bottomed out. Moreover, the current trend is that cars bottom out slightly earlier and also start to increase earlier. The Lusso though is a bit of a strange one in here. It's a new car and values moved approximately the same as for the F12, so this highlights that there's a common trend. The cars can either just be riding on the used car market trend, or it might be so that it's simply the V12 which is driving the prices. What's namely noteworthy is that the pattern of the price trend for the 599, FF, Lusso and F12 differs from the cars which I analyzed on the channel. In my recent videos you could have seen that many price trends start to flatten after a period of severe increases. The V12 market however moved very slowly during 2020 and more recently accelerated slightly. Yet one key metric which is still missing here is the time it takes to sell one of these V12s. That's something I'm working on to incorporate in the future. After all, in theory it could be so that prices are just increasing but that the cars are not selling. Nevertheless, when looking at these price trends it's key to compare it to some other cars, as this provides a context to the numbers. And since we had a look at the V8 market a few weeks ago, let's compare the V12 to the V8 market. Over here we have them all included in one graph. We have from bottom to top the 360, F430, FF, 599, 458, F12, Lusso, 488 and 812. And all of these cars exclude their special editions like the Pistas, Scuderias and TDFs, etc. Unfortunately though, you can see that I don't have the exact same dates for all of the models, so for the price comparison I used October 2020 as the starting point. Over here we have now the price change for the mid-engine V8 models on the left and the one for the V12 models on the right. Also note that we need to remember that this 9% increase of the Lusso is driven by the mileage development and that the actual price increase is a lot higher. Corrected for the mileage increase we are looking at a 26% increase, so let's change that. Now then, if we look at the average increase for both markets, we can see that the V12 saw an increase of 30% versus 22% for the V8s. Hence, during the last 1.5 years, the V12 market had the upper hand. However, we can see that within each market segment, it are clearly the older cars which saw the largest increase. But this makes sense as they were already bottomed out to start with. If you by the way want to know more about the price increase in the V8 market, then I recommend that you click on the pop-up banner right over there. Now the big question which results from this table is of course, what will happen in the future? Will V12s continue to increase more than V8s? Will V8s catch up? Or will everything even out over time? That's a tricky one to answer, as many of these markets are very small. In the previous V10 video we saw clear indicators that V12s might continue to increase, and they did, but it's more difficult now. Prices increased quite severely and supply didn't drop any further, it remained stable. Also the overall quality in the market has improved as most cars have now a slightly lower mileage. So based on this I think that it's unlikely that we will see a decrease in the price level during the foreseeable future. Rather, I think we can expect a decrease in the price increase rate or a flat price development. It's unlikely that prices will continue to increase at this pace as supply has stabilized. And with that, let's wrap up and conclude. We started with an overview of the V12 market including its sensitivity to the mileage and then transitioned into the price developments. This revealed that the FF and 599 clearly increased the most, followed by the F12 and the Lusso. We then did a deep dive to some models and discovered some model specific things which you should take into account when interpreting the price trends. Following this, we compared the price trends to the one in the V8 market, and this revealed that the price increase was larger in the V12 market. We also talked a bit about future prices, and this resulted in the conclusion that a decrease in the increase rate or a flat development is most likely. And with that we arrived at the end of this video. Now if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car markets but would have liked to see an analysis for a different car, let me know down below in the comment section for which car you would like to see an analysis. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I will make a video about it. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so you'll get actually notified when your requested analysis goes live. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.